Hi, dear students. Now, look, we're going to match which is the graph of each of these two functions that Alex is giving us. It says, consider the following polynomial functions. And we have f of x equals 2x to the fourth minus 18x to the second. And the other polynomial function is g of x equals x times x to the second minus 9. We have to choose the graph of each function from the choices below. And as you can see, we have 6 choices. Okay? Now, how are we going to identify each of the graphs? Let's take the first function. And look, the first step for us is to identify which is the degree of the function. So as you can see, the highest power in this function is the fourth power. So the degree of this function is a fourth degree. And as the leading coefficient is positive, we have that this parabola is racing to the left, but also is racing to the right. Okay, so it races to the left and races to the right. Let's see. The first graph, graph A, is not racing to the left nor to the right. Graph B, no. C, no. So we are going to look for the ones that are racing to the left and the right. So as you can see, just graph E and graph F are the ones that could work for us. But how are we going to identify which is the one that we are looking for? We're going to, as you can see, look, in these two graphs, the y-intercept is in different position. In this one is in the origin, and in this other one, we don't have the value, but this is not in the origin, so it is going to help us. So let's calculate the y-intercept of the first function. Now, the step number 2, find the y-intercept. How are we going to do that? Remember that we have to evaluate the function in 0. So when x equals 0, y, we substitute it in the function, and y equals 0. So that means that the y-intercept is in the origin, 0, 0. So let's go back, and we can see that the graph that corresponds to the first function is graph E, this one. Okay? Now let's see how are we going to identify the second one. We have g of x equals x times x to the second minus 9. How are we going to know which is the degree of this one? Remember that we multiply this x that we have here times the x to the second that we have inside the parentheses, and we get that this is x to the third. And check the signs of the 2x that we have here. This is positive times positive, positive. So the leading coefficient of this x, of this polynomial, is positive. So we have a third degree function with a leading coefficient which is positive. So remember, when this is an odd degree with a positive leading coefficient, it falls to the left and it rises to the right. Okay? Now, once we know that, let's see, what do we have here? Okay, we can identify that it could be graph B or graph C. But now check, dear students, that both of them has the y-intercept in the origin. In the graph B, exactly in the origin, and graph C is a little bit to the left. But let's check. When we have in the second step, when we find the y-intercept, remember we evaluate the function that they are giving us in 0, and we get that y equals 0. So here we have that the function has the y-intercept exactly in the origin. But in order to confirm which is the one that we are looking for, which is the graph that corresponds to the second function, we are going to look for the zeros. And remember the third step. How are we going to look for the zeros? We take both factors, in this case, 2. So, and we equalize them to 0. So I'm going to take this x, and I'm going to equalize it to 0. And then we take the other factor, which is x to the second minus 9, and I equalize it to 0. And then you solve for x, remember? So x in the first one equals 0, and in the other one, we have x when we solve for x, we get that x equals to plus or minus 3. So as you can see, here we have the three roots, 1, 2, and 3, the positive and the negative 3. So the graph that corresponds, dear students, is graph B, because as you can see, we have the roots in minus 3, in 0, and in positive 3. Okay, dear students, and that's the way you are going to solve, as you can see here below. It says which is the graph of the first function, and here you have to choose. It is going to say graph A, graph B, and so on, and that's the way you are going to give your answer. Okay? Thanks. Have a nice day. Stay at home and take care. See you later, dear students. Bye.